Hi everyone and welcome back to Shrink Happens. Our client on the couch today, the one and only Tony Soprano. Now if you're a fan of The Sopranos, your first question might be, why do you analyze Tony Soprano in therapy? Isn't that what the whole show was about? And you're absolutely right. One of the most iconic threads in The Sopranos is Tony's therapy journey with the brilliant and, let's be honest, stunning Dr. Melfi. It was groundbreaking to see a mafia boss sitting in a therapy room, unraveling his panic attacks, his trauma, and his demons. It was raw, messy, and deeply human. But here's why we are doing this today, especially why women might find it fascinating. Because behind every alpha male, every man who seems strong, in power, and untouchable, there is a story. And often it's a story written in a childhood long before you met him. A person's life script is often shaped by decisions made in childhood, heavily influenced by family dynamics. Tony's life is tragic, volatile, and spiraling further into darkness as the series go on. It was built upon deeply ingrained cognitive distortions and core beliefs. These are unconscious patterns formed in early life that shape how we see ourselves, others, and the world. Tony grew up in an emotionally unstable home. Fear, chaos, emotional neglect, especially from his mother, became the emotional blueprint of his inner world, and it shaped the man that he became. Powerful, dangerous, but deeply fractured inside. And here's where you come in. Many of you who watched our Sex and the City series wrote to us and told us that you recognized yourself or someone you loved in the characters. And that's the power of the character-driven therapy. Because these stories are not just about them, they are about you too. So as you watch this session with Tony today, I want you to keep something in mind. Maybe you've met a Tony before, a tough, controlling, violent man. Understanding what shaped him might help you understand men in your own life. And more importantly, it can help you realize the patterns that you might be walking in without realizing it. So as you watch, ask yourself, what core beliefs run my life? What cognitive beliefs am I carrying from my own childhood? And how are these cognitive distortions shaping my life without me even realizing it? And how are these cognitive distortions shaping the choices I make without even realizing it? So the video today is not just about Tony. It's about all of us, our wounds, our defenses, and our longing to be understood. So let's begin. We have a special guest today, as you probably noticed. It's my cat, his name is Luigi. So let's begin. So as I said before, a person's life script is often shaped by the decision made in childhood, often heavily influenced by the family. Tony's trauma expresses itself through rigid psychological defenses. Psychological defenses are unconscious ways our mind protects us from emotional pain or discomfort. They help us avoid things that can be too hard to face, like fear, guilt, or shame. But they also can keep us stuck if we don't become aware of them. Let me give you an example from my own life. When I was a child, my mother often criticized me for bad grades and underperforming. She made a very common mistake believing that her children's performance directly reflect her self-worth. So when I failed to meet her expectations, she would often scream at me and then go cold and distant and withdraw the affection as a form of punishment. So what do you think happened? As a child, I became obsessed with getting the best grades, not because I loved learning, but because I was terrified of losing my mother's love. I adapted to survive by overperforming, but of course it came with a cost. I grew into an adult that constantly criticized myself for not doing well at work, for not looking perfect, for not being good enough at various things in my life. Somewhere deep inside, without realizing this, I carried a belief that love can only be earned through performance, and that I was not good enough on my own, that I had to be exceptional to be accepted and to be safe. These were my cognitive distortions that I carried in my adulthood. They were formed in a mind of a scared child. And only through my own therapy and self-reflection, I started seeing them and becoming aware of them. And slowly I began to free myself. Well, not fully, but life is a journey, isn't it? And that's how defenses work. Now let's go back to Tony. In his world, showing weakness can cost him everything. So his defenses are survival mechanisms. But they also trap him. So let's take a closer look at his family dynamics. Tony idealized his father. He admired his criminal status and his power. Unconsciously, he linked manhood to dominance and crime. His mother, Livia, was emotionally abusive. She ridiculed therapy, shamed vulnerability, and denied Tony any sense of intrinsic worth. Her message was pretty clear. The world is evil. People betray you, and love doesn't exist. Livia's unpredictability led Tony to believe that even loving women are dangerous. Tony's environment growing up was completely unstable. There was fear, unpredictability, and emotional neglect, particularly from his mother. And as a child, Tony made key decisions. Number 1, to survive and earn respect, I must be strong and feared like my father. Number 2, showing emotions is dangerous. Never show weakness. He internalized shame around emotions due to his mother's ridicule. Number 3, women, even loving ones, can turn on you. Don't trust them. Number 4, there's nothing lovable about me. Number 5, to be loved and accepted, I must be in the family business. Love must be earned through usefulness and crime. He believed that he needed to join his father's world to be loved. These are Tony's core beliefs and cognitive distortions that went on to shape his entire life. They became the foundation for the destructive psychological defenses and behavioral patterns we see play out again and again throughout the show. For example, aggression. When feeling emotionally threatened, Tony lashes out, yelling, mocking, and even threatening violence. This is especially visible in therapy with Dr. Melfi, where vulnerable topics are met with rage or deflection. Denial. For a long time, he denies that his panic attacks are psychological. He's attributing them to bad food, stress, etc., which is a very common defense mechanism in trauma. Projection. He projects his internal fears onto others. For instance, when his son, AJ, has a panic attack, Tony blames the therapist rather than facing a possibility of inherited emotional issue. Rationalization. Tony justifies infidelity by reminding Carmela of the comfort and wealth he provides. Logic is used to excuse guilt and avoid accountability. Emotional isolation. He often speaks about horrifying events in a very flat tone, completely disconnecting from his feelings to appear strong and in control. And of course, sarcasm and humor. He mocks therapy and feelings, often making crude or sexist jokes, sometimes even trying to seduce his psychiatrist, using sexuality to regain power and diminish emotional intimacy. Let's have a little reflection moment. Tony's story shows how early emotional wounds shape adult behavior and relationships. We all carry childhood decisions into adulthood, sometimes sabotaging ourselves without even knowing it. So the question for you is, what early childhood decisions are still guiding your life? Share your story with us in the comments, and maybe someone will find it useful, and it will help them to see their own self-sabotage. Now let's talk about Tony in therapy. Let's go back to the very first episode. Tony comes to Dr. Melfi after experiencing his first panic attack. He says it himself. They made me come here. But the truth is, a part of Tony knew that he was in trouble. Beneath the defensiveness and the denial, something inside of him knew he needed help. His presence in therapy shows a crack in the shell, longing for something more than just power and fear. In his sessions with Dr. Melfi, we see how Tony's aggression, cynicism, and humor are all parts of his armor. They are defenses shielding him from help, not for the sake of being difficult, but survival strategies from a deeply wounded child. He is terrified that if he opens the Pandora box, he is gonna lose control. But ironically, the very act of staying silent is what fuels his panic attacks. His panic attacks symbolize the deep internal conflict between the hardened exterior and a frightened, unloved child within. So the question is, why didn't therapy work for Tony? In my opinion, therapy didn't help Tony because of several intertwined reasons, and they're actually quite revealing. He came to therapy to manage the symptoms, not to transform. Initially, Tony's goal was to stop panic attacks from happening, not to change his reality. In therapy terms, that's symptom relief, without real exploration of the root causes. And throughout the series, we don't really see his motivation to change or to face his deeper wounds. In fact, he's doing everything he can to avoid going there. Tony had pretty rigid defenses and a complete lack of trust. Tony's aggression, charm, humor, sarcasms were defenses that he was not willing to drop. He let Dr. Melfi see the glimpses of vulnerability, but he never consistently sat with the raw pain. He avoided it all the time. Deep therapy requires sustained openness, which he could not tolerate. His defenses were survival tools that he learned in his early childhood, and dismantling them would feel too dangerous. Also, there was this moral conflict. He was trying to become psychologically healthier while actively living a violent criminal life. It's like trying to quit drinking and going to a bar every night. The environment was constantly reinforcing the very beliefs and behaviors that therapy was trying to shift. Tony's cognitive distortions, such as the world is cruel, you cannot trust anyone, vulnerability is weakness, they stayed mostly intact. Without replacing those with healthier beliefs, therapy became more of a venting space rather than a transformative one. At a subconscious level, Tony was very loyal to the identity and survival strategies formed in his childhood. Changing too much would mean not just losing defenses, but losing the self that he's built to survive, and he wasn't ready to face that. Tony lived between two worlds, the family man with wife and kids, and the criminal boss ruling through fear and power. But this double life was deeply unhealthy, and over time the darker world just consumed him. Tony already had trust issues, but as the years went on, he lost the very few people that he was close with. His marriage was transactional, built on financial control rather than true intimacy. He cheated, hid his inner world, and kept living on his own terms. Even among his closest friends, betrayal was never too far away. By the end of the series, Tony was completely alone, serving the same beliefs that he formed in his early childhood. You cannot trust anyone, strength is survival, show weakness and you will be crushed. So here's the truth. When we see someone who is overly tough, overly masculine, dominating everyone around them, it's often not real strength. It's overcompensation. It's a little boy inside, still following the rules that he invented to survive a painful childhood. If you watch The Sopranos from the start to finish, you will notice something brilliant. Go back to the first episode and you will see brighter colors and lighter energy. But as the seasons progressed, the tone gets darker, heavier, until it becomes almost suffocating. This slow descent mirrors Tony's internal gradual collapse, much like a Dostoevsky's novel, where the devil is in the details and the tragedy builds quietly piece by piece. And that's why Tony's story is a mirror. It asks you to look at your own life script. What beliefs did you form in your childhood to survive? What patterns are you still following without realizing them? What parts of your life are slowly darkening because you haven't questioned them? Tony's therapy journey may have kept him afloat for a little while, But without true change, the current just pulled him under. But you don't have to wait for that to happen. Start by noticing your own distortions, your own defenses, and you can start rewriting your story today. If Tony's story taught us anything, is that self-awareness is not enough. You have to act on it. Your past may explain you, but it doesn't have to define you. And that's all for today's session with Tony Soprano. If you found yourself reflecting on your own patterns during this video, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. This was Shrink Happens, me, Christina, behind the scenes, Anastasia, our creative producer, and Luigi right here on the couch, sleeping peacefully. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.